Today is the day that we are probably going to have a verdict in the Karmelo Anthony case, but before closing arguments began, the defense in the Karmelo Anthony trial objected to a jury charge before the closing arguments began. Now, we talked about the jury charge in my last video, but the defense is basically citing the provoking the difficulty instruction under the penal code. Now, this is related to the self-defense argument and provocation. So what does this mean? Provoking the difficulty is like this old common law name for what Texas now calls the provocation limitation on self-defense. The basic idea is that normally you can use force to defend yourself, but you lose that right if you provoked the other person into attacking you so you'd have an excuse to hurt them. In other words, you can't start something as a setup and then claim self-defense when the other person responds. So when the judge gives a provocation instruction, the jury is essentially told this: even if you believe Karmelo Anthony was defending himself, if you find that he provoked Austin Metcalf's use of force as a pretext to harm him, then his self-defense claim fails entirely. It's a trapdoor under the self-defense argument. Under the leading Texas case on this, which is Smith versus State, a provocation instruction is only proper if the evidence supports all three of these things. First, that the defendant did something or said something that provoked the attack. Second, that the act or words were reasonably calculated to provoke the attack. And third, and this is the critical one, that he did it with the intent and for the purpose of having a pretext to harm the other person. That third element is the high bar. It's not enough that Karmelo was rude or refused to leave or said, touch me and find out, or touch me and see what happens. The state has to show he did those things specifically as a setup to justify stabbing Austin. Now you can see why this is the fight of the day. The prosecution's entire theory has been provocation. Witness after witness said Karmelo was the one provoking this entire fight, that he refused to leave, that he kept his hand in the backpack and warned, touch me and find out what happens. If the judge includes the provocation instruction, the prosecutor gets to stand up in closing and tell the jury that they can reject self-defense outright because Karmelo brought the whole thing on himself, which is obviously devastating to the defense. So the defense is objecting hard for two reasons. One, the instruction guts their case by handing the jury a clean legal path to convict without ever having to decide whether Karmelo was actually afraid for his life. And two, they're almost certainly arguing the evidence doesn't justify that third Smith versus State element, that there's no proof Karmelo said or did these things with specific intent to manufacture a pretext to stab someone, as opposed to just being a teenager mouthing off who didn't want to leave. So Texas appeals courts have repeatedly cautioned that this instruction should rarely be given and is a frequent source of reversal when it's handed out without strong evidence of that pretext intent. So follow along for the rest of the day. It's only 9:30 and I'm Central Standard Time, so it's like the same time frame as or a time zone as this case. I will keep you updated all day on how this turns out.